prices of new and existing homes in Lisbon peaked in the third quarter of 2023, and we've continued to see the prices decline since then. This and more on today's update in the Portuguese home real estate market. This is Ted at Valley of the Dolly. So I thought it was really important to give you an update on what's happening with the real estate market in Portugal. And I know we talk about other real estate markets across Europe and what's happening there, and also other important things that expats and people living inside Europe really want to hear about. But in this particular case, the fact that the real estate market has now begun to turn in Portugal is really news, and it's something that is been long waited for those people who have been looking for an apartment. And I think if you have not purchased yet, you can kind of breathe a sigh of relief, because now you're finally seeing that home prices have begun to turn in Lisbon and also in Portugal. If I look at what the National Institute of Statistics in Portugal published in the first quarter 2024, it will show you that there is a 7% increase in home prices year over year. This is the home price index. The home price index is kind of a weighted average. It takes into account the previous 2 months and the period. It uses 2015 as a base of 100, and then it shows you, this is why it's valuable, because it shows you what the base is in 2015, and it shows you how much real estate values have actually increased in that last 10 years. I'd say the negative is that it's a weighted average, so it doesn't always show you in a timely fashion how real estate prices are changing. And it also varies depending on what they consider to be important or the weighted averages that are needed. So for example, in this quarter, they weighted the statistics 71% in favor of existing homes sales, and then 29% in favor of new construction. But in the previous quarter, they weighted at 75% in favor of existing homes and 25% in favor of new construction. So these statistics, these weighted averages, they change, and there's a number of other factors that come into play. But if we simply look at what the price changes have been in Lisbon and in Portugal, the Lisbon home prices peaked in the third quarter of 2023, and we have seen significant declines since then. And I say significant because if you look at the last quarter that was published, the first quarter of 2024, that price on average, you would have to go back to the first quarter of 2023 before you saw a number lower than that. That's why it still appears year on year that there is an increase, but those prices are definitely pulling back. The prices inside of Portugal as a whole, we're not seeing that dramatic of a shift yet. We've only had really 1 quarter of price declines here in Portugal. And it's possible that this may just be an anomaly, but it's very interesting because if you look at the last 5 years, you find really that prices quarter upon quarter, except for maybe the beginning of COVID, have really continued to just constantly increase. And now we're seeing multiple quarters for Lisbon where property prices have decreased, and at least 1 quarter where Portuguese property prices have decreased. It also lines up with a couple of other things that the government has imposed on the real estate market. The first is the fact that the NHR, the non-habitual residency scheme, has been done away with at the end of last year, as has the golden visa. So if you look at foreign purchasers of property, it is a dramatic shift. You're finding that EU citizens who live outside of Portugal, they are buying homes at a rate 22% less than just a quarter ago in the fourth quarter of 2024. If you're looking at citizens who reside outside of the EU and outside of Portugal, they are also purchasing property at 22% lower rates than just the last quarter of 2023. So yes, you're seeing a dramatic slowdown in the purchase of property by people who reside outside of Portugal. Why is that important? That's important because then the NHR and the golden visa schemes have gone away for the most part. And with that, a lot of the foreign buyers have chosen not to purchase any longer here. On top of that, if you look at the introduction of the MyAB, which took place in the fourth quarter, you find that that program has brought forward more properties onto the market for rent and also for purchase. So we see more inventory on the market, we see fewer buyers, and we see prices beginning to go down. So there will come a point where you find equilibrium again, where the price, the number of units coming onto the market, and the number of homes that can be sold come back into equilibrium. But I think right now we're definitely still in an adjustment period. And I also find that when property prices begin to drop, most people begin to say, well, you know, unless I have to buy, I'm going to hold off on purchasing that property. Why? Because the price may decline further, right? And nobody wants to buy on a downward slope. It may not mean that it's a bad deal, and I'm not a personal investment expert, so you need to do your own research as well. But historically, we've found that many people, initially when the market begins to decline, will hold off on purchasing. They'll wait a little bit to see where the market is headed. And once they feel that they're getting a good deal, they may not wait for the market to bottom out or to crater at the bottom. They may buy when they feel that they're getting a decent value, and that in a year or two or 3 or 4, one, they're paying a rate that they can afford, and 2, they know in a couple years they're going to be able to sell this property if they need to and move on. But as we know, most people will buy that property and they may not sell it for years and years. But it's going to be very interesting to look at what's happening in the real estate market in 2024 in Portugal. And we're going to compare that against some of the things that have been happening across Europe. So if you look at this chart, there's only 5 countries in this chart that show an increase in the property values in 2023 once you take inflation into account. So if you remove just property price increases, and you say, hey, you know, inflation ran at 3, 4, 5% in that country, you find that most countries definitely had a negative declining value of real estate in 2023. Portugal was one of the only 5 that had, but as you notice, it's barely 3% increase in real value in property prices in 2023. And there was this article that came out recently. This is from the fourth quarter of 2023. And it's saying they expected an 8.7 increase in the value of property in Portugal in 2024. Personally, I'm finding that really difficult to see happening, especially when we're seeing declines in the value of property in Lisbon. And the current price that the properties are selling are closing in on the first quarter of 2023, which means we've had significant declines there. We're also seeing declines across the country. So it'll be interesting to see at the end of 2024 if this prediction of 8.7% increases in property value in 2024 hit. And this expectation was delivered knowing that the golden visa had been done away with, that NHR had come to an end, and that MyAB would be enacted. So let's take a look in a few months at what the real estate market is doing again in Portugal, and we can look at some of the other countries in the meantime and see where property values are headed. There are a lot of opportunities we're seeing inside the digital nomad community. There was an article that recently came out saying that Lisbon and Portugal were no longer the #1 location for nomads to live. So we're going to have to look at that in a future video. If you like this video, please hit the like and subscribe button, and I look forward to talking with you again soon. This is Ted. Bye now.